I was going to say good morning, but I think it's nearly afternoon, and it's time to have a prayer and go home. No, too early? Too early, okay. Well, I would like to say thank you to Caitlin and to Noah for organizing and leading this worship. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and thank you to all the young people that participated up the front. I was asked if I have a message for the ladies this morning, but I don't. I have a message for everyone. And it's more of a testimony than anything else, because I think I have something in here. No, just a magazine. Because I have been part of this amazing ride. How many of you have followed us on Instagram on I Will Go Ride? Michelle, Stephen, okay, Narelle, anybody else? No? Okay. Well, let me tell you of a great adventure. It was called I Will Go Bike Ride. And I tell you, I never thought that I will enjoy this as much as I did. A bunch of pastors and lay people started in Melbourne, in the Federation Square, and we decided to go all the way to Avondale, over 1,200 kilometers. And the reason for that was just to emphasize health and get fit, but also to share literature with people. Now, something you need to know about me is that I don't really like to go out of my comfort zone and share literature with people. And that goes way back to when I did my studies, theology studies, back in Romania. And I think it's here in Avondale as well, it's the same rule. 6 months, you have to go and do colporting. Back then was called colporting. These days it's called literature evangelism. So we had to go and knock at the doors and sell books. And that was not for me. I didn't enjoy it. And I wondered, how am I going to go here? Well, we started in Federation Square. This is how we got out of Melbourne. And by the time we went out of Melbourne, I had 2 rejections. And you know, when you start something and you are rejected, you feel really disappointed, and you know, am I going to do this or not? But Pastor Glenn, right here, and where is Anthony here? I think he's at the back. So Anthony and Glenn, they were masters at it. They just, when they will saw someone on the side of the road, they would just stop and take the books out of the jersey at the back and just talk to people and give them literature. It was so natural. These people, they went so high in my esteem just because of that. We started to ride, and there was some beautiful scenery. This is a little video of how we went, and I don't think sound comes out of it, but this is Pastor Michael work at
Day 1 of the I Will Go Ride Melbourne.
There you are.
It's going well.
Beautiful scenery.
And we've met some amazing people coming through Melbourne.
So we were hiking in here, and we met some other bicycle riders, and at the end of the ride here, we stopped and we gave them literature. We told them what it was about. So the rule was this: the ones that would be up the front will wave and make a bit of a fuss, and people look at us with the red shirts, red jerseys, and say, oh, this is something interesting. And then the last 2 at the end, they will stop and talk to them and give them literature. That was the point. This is, I think, in day 2 or 3 on a country road. The same thing applies. So we were up the front, and then a farmer came with his little ute, and when he saw us making a bit of fuss and waving at him, he stopped, and the last two, you see them there, they are actually talking to him and giving him literature. This is Pastor Anthony Kent. He would take devotionals, and at the beginning of every day, we will wake up at 6 o'clock, have breakfast, and by 7, we were on the road. This is another start of the day here. And on Wednesday night, we went to Wangaratta Church for a bit of fellowship with some of the people there. They gave us some nice food that we desperately needed, because eating just bread and peanut butter and other little things every day, sometimes you want to have a bit of diversity. So we shared with them, we prayed with them, and Anthony Ken met Carolyn. Her maiden name was Gersbeck, Carolyn Gersbeck, and there is a story I'll share with you later about that family, and they were so happy to connect to each other. This is in the famous Beechworth Bakery. Yes, and I recommend you get a good pie when you go to Beechworth if you ever go that way. Especially they had their latest addition to pies was an Indian curry pie. And that's what we had, and it was amazing. This is another instance. This is a funny incident here. We were riding, and we saw this lady trimming the grass, and of course we tried to wave at her, and she would not look up. She had her mufflers on, and yes, and Pastor Glenn and Anthony, they went behind. They had to tap her on the shoulder to get her attention, but that was good, because then her husband came and they got all the books that we had to give them. So you get all sorts of things like this. This is me here for those that want to see the bike. I was really happy to be, this was on the way to Tamburamba. Kids, have you been to Tamburamba? How many of you? You know the hills there? Very steep. That was the hardest day. And there we met this interesting lady. I stopped on the side of the road to give her some literature, and then I found that she is a Seventh-day Adventist. And she is the one that owned the place where you guys went for the camporee, right? So that was an interesting development in our ride. And then, of course, we wanted to take a photo. This is something really cute. We had a flat tire. We had some flat tires along the way, but this is not one of them. But what happened here on the highway, on Hume Highway, we had half a day on Hume Highway, and Hume Highway is very busy. And we stopped to fix the tire of one of our colleagues, and all of a sudden, from a driveway which was about 20 to 30 meters further up, these three little puppies come out and go on the highway amidst the cars. We were all screaming. We didn't want to see them killed. And we stopped the cars. We caught them. We got them back. Then we didn't know where they go, because there were a few farms and they were quite far away. And they would not go. They would stay around us. Then this one in particular went again on the highway, and I had so hard a time to take it, to catch it. We stopped the highway for probably 3 to 4 minutes. Now you understand what 3-4 minutes means on the highway? The good thing was that the drivers were happy, and my colleagues were happy too, because they started to give literature. And that was good because I had a good time with this little puppy. Then I went on my bike on a dirt road to find the farm. Found the farm, the lady was so happy. She received all the books I had to give her. And she also gave us ice cream to all of us, which was really nice. So that was a good day on the highway. We gave literature to many different people, even to policemen. And that was in the morning when, I think it was on Sunday morning. Yes, it was on Sunday morning, and they would stop cars to check them for, drugs and things like that. And I reckon there were lots of cars that were happy to pass by because we kept them. Now this is an interesting story. We had these boys, a bit of country people that were driving our car, and they found it difficult to follow us in the cities. And especially as we were approaching Sydney, we couldn't, it was difficult to meet with them at the appointed time, at the appointed place, so we had to change all sorts of detours. And these were some divine appointments that we have had along the way, especially this one here. We had to stop to wait for them for about 15 to 20 minutes, and we decided to stop at a place that we found it with shade and looked good. But once we stopped there, a lady came out of nowhere. It was this lady, and she would not stop talking. We wanted to talk and tell her what we are doing, and she would tell us what she wanted to tell us. And we learned along the way that she was in charge of a senior committee of ladies and men that were in charge of a little place where we stopped along the trail, along the train track, and they were basically beautifying it, making it nice, having a bit of a garden, and talking to people. In about 10 minutes, she got out of the houses around probably 30 people. She rallied them outside, and they all came, and they talked to us, and we gave them the books. That was amazing. This here happened at a train station. This is the lady that looked after the train station, and this I think was a lady that was waiting for the train, and we gave them books. We gave books to teenagers, to children, to anybody. This happened in Sydney as we approached the South Pacific Division. They took some photos, as you can see, of Pastor Glenn there. And I must say, in Sydney and Melbourne, we find it more difficult to give away literature. In the countryside, no one said no. They were actually all welcoming. Very interesting dynamics. This is at the SPD as we arrived, and this is in Pastor Glenn's office. He wanted all of us to go there with the bikes, and he has the office upstairs, so we had to carry the bikes up and crowd in his little office there to take a photo. We thoroughly enjoyed it, and I know he enjoyed it very much. When we got the last day to Avondale, we met with the other group that came from Brisbane. So there was a group from Melbourne, and there was a group from Brisbane. And we arrived all together at Avondale, and we met at the fire station. And here are the greetings. We had one lady with us, this lady here called Tu Phong from Vietnam. She was part of the original I Will Go Ride in America. And she wanted to come here as well. And this is how we were going into the university. And this is at the end with my good friend Caleb. And I think I have one more. Yes, this is the official one for the arrival. Now, why did we do this? Crazy people. 170 kilometers every day. We had 2 days with 190 kilometers. And I can tell you that after about 140 kilometers, there is no way you can feel comfortable in the seat. You try and you move and you see the others moving and you... why did we do that? It's because of Philip Reekie and a bunch of other people. And it's all in this little tract. We'll start by giving the track, and we'll tell them what we do, and then we'll give them the magazine. By the way, Signs of the Times, January and February edition this year has us on the cover, and you could give it away to people. And you could say, well, I met these people, and one of them is actually from here, from Tasmania. Have a magazine and read what they've done. It's amazing. And it's one way of giving something to people. It's your own way of witnessing and helping the kingdom grow. And also, when we saw them that they are interested in the magazine, we would tell them that we have 2 books to give away. Because in the story was that the books are Live More Happy and The Great Hope, which is a pocket edition of The Great Controversy. Quite good. So the story was like this. Frederick Reekie, we would not tell this story to everyone, it would be much quick, because you didn't have half an hour to talk to people. But the idea was that this Frederick Reekie and his family, he moved from England to Australia to find another life and another wife. He was there in England. He was in charge of a very famous garden. He was a gardener. So he came to Melbourne, and there in Melbourne he actually was converted to Adventism, him and his cousin called Philip. He married this lady here, and of course they had children, as you can see in the photo. The photo is taken a bit later. But what's interesting about Frederick Reekie is that he moved to Western Australia, and he was the first Adventist in Western Australia. He rode his bike, that one there, with 1 gear. Steve, 1 gear. And then from Perth went to, help me with the geography. Young people with geography. Which one is, where is Kalgoorlie? From Perth. East? Yeah. And then what is south? Albany. And how many kilometers are there? A long way. Those that go with the caravan, they know it's a long way. Now, Frederick Reekie, Philip, I don't think we will be able to do that. No way. Philip did all those distances 2 or 3 times, and he would stop and will sell books and have Bible studies and start churches. Nearly all the churches in Western Australia have him as the one that initiated everything. Someone riding a bike. Now, because he was gardener, he was called to come back to Avondale, because Avondale now had gardens. And they said, oh, Frederick Reekie knows how to look after gardens. We'll get him back here. So they got him back to Avondale, and this is where the photo was taken. However, one day, he receives a call from, a message from a lady that lived on an estate there at Avondale called Sunnyside. And if you receive a message from Ellen White to come to talk to her, that meant 2 things. And everybody was kind of worried. And he was a little bit worried too. What would Ellen White have to tell me? What did I do wrong? Of course, he went there, and Ellen White told him directly, I have a message from you. When the prophet tells you, she has a message from you, you're kind of wondering what's going on. And she told him very plainly, Frederick, you need to go back on your bike. Your talents are wasted. There are plenty of people to look after trees and gardens. You are the best evangelist selling and giving books away. Your talents are wasted here. Go back on your bike. He listened and he went back on his bike, went to Queensland, up to Cairns, and then coming back. While they were in Queensland, one of his children died because of the weather. They were not adjusted to the weather. And then they came back. All the eastern side of Australia, from Brisbane all the way to Melbourne, has history of Frederick Reekie selling books and initiating other churches. But what he did was so amazing that convinced other young people to do it as well. There were a bunch of riders that would get books from the city, and this is how our story will start telling people what are we doing. We are doing this in the honor of Philip and Frederick Reekie. And other bike riders in the 1800s, they would take books from the city because the books were available in the city, but they were not available in the countryside. And they would ride their bikes with books and sell to the people in the country. And we want to do that, only that we are not selling them, we are giving them away. And one of the amazing books that Philip Reekie had with him back then was, by the way, this is Philip Reekie here, was the book called Great Controversy. Now, there was a farmer in the middle of nowhere in Ugara, and you probably have seen the video that Pastor Glenn organized a while ago. There was a farmer called Tom Kent, and Tom and his wife Mary were living on the farm there in Ugara in the middle of nowhere, and at one point in time Mary gets sick. She has contracted pneumonia, and back then if you would contract pneumonia, that would be your death sentence, and she knew it. And before she died, she got Tom and she said, promise me that we'll meet in heaven. And please do everything you can for our children to get there as well. They had 11 children. She died at 45 years of age. And poor Tom, alone at 45 years of age, promised I'll meet you in heaven, but had no idea how to get there. Nursing the little 11th child, she died, and then 2 weeks after that, he was behind his horse plowing the land, and Philip Reekie comes along on his bike, and he gives him this book. Gives him this book. This is the original book that they bought. And he started to read it. He was reading it with his children. His children thought that he has some, because he discovered the Sabbath and he was keeping the Sabbath, and his children thought that there's a problem with Dad. And the neighbors thought there's a problem with Tom. Of course, his wife died, so there must be something crazy going in his mind. Through a series of events, the neighbors accepted the Sabbath as well. They all read the book Great Controversy. And as a result, in 1904, this is a picture taken in 1904 with the families in that church. And the families, the founding members are Kent, Chapman, Gersbach, and that's Carolyn Gersbach, is one of the great-great-granddaughters, Packham, Thompson, Gray. As a result of that book that was sold back then, more than 20,000 people accepted Christ. Now, that is amazing when you think what a book can do. But when you think that Jesus actually talked about this, Jesus talked about it when he said there was a farmer that went out and just throw seeds around. And that's the parable of the sower, which we're going to look at it in a few minutes that we have left. What we try to achieve is to multiply disciples. And you know, the cycle is to prepare the soil, to sow, to cultivate, and then to harvest. But this is what Jesus said. He said, but the seed falling on good soil, how many soils he had in his story? How many? There are not 10. How many? Well, if we read in Matthew 13 there are 4 types of soils that Jesus said the farmer throw liberally everywhere, right? But the 4th one was the good one. He said the seed falling on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. And this is the one who produces a crop yielding 100, 60 or 30 times more than what was sown. Now, there are a few lessons, and I need to go very quickly through this because I don't have time, but there are a few lessons. And lesson number 1 is to prepare the soil. When we decided to go on this bike ride, we started to pray that God will bring us people that needed to hear, but also to prepare us. Jesus had in mind that, in order for the kingdom of God and for the salvation to be effective in someone's life, your heart needs to be ready. So the question is, are you preparing your soil? Are you preparing your heart? What do you put in your heart? There were 2 brothers that their father died. And before the father died, he was a farmer as well. And before the father died, he said to them, there is a treasure hidden in this field. And after the father died, the 2 brothers took their tools and they started to work the land. And they took it over, and they were really searching for, they actually unraveled and they worked every inch of that field. They couldn't find the treasured chest. There was no chest in there with treasure. And they digged and nothing happened. Finally, the season came and they had to throw the seeds for the corn and so on and other. And that year, their land produced so much more than the neighbors around that they actually found a big treasure in that. Now, it's important to prepare the land, to prepare the soil, to be able to have 100 times more than what your neighbor has. There's also another lesson that we can learn from here, is that we need to have faith in the power of the seed. You see, the Apostle Paul said as well, I planted the seed, but someone else watered it, and at the end of the day, God has made it to grow. It's not my work. The farmer was only scattering the seeds around. Now, the Great Commission that Jesus has given us says, therefore go and make disciples. And he also told us that when we do that, there is a power that comes. Right? You don't do that in your own power. You don't do that when you are alone. You need to have the Holy Spirit. In proclaiming the everlasting gospel to people, we need to have the power with us. And this is something that we found in Present Truth, Volume 15. E.G. Wagner said this: unless power accompanies the message, it is not the gospel. That which makes God's message to the world a gospel or glad tidings is that it brings the power which is so much needed. The gospel is the power of God to everyone that believes unto salvation. In the church of Christ, there must be seen the working of his own mighty power. Unless this is true, his people do not bear witness to him. Any power short of the power of God does not reveal him to man. So, when we try to do it in our own strength, what this tells me is we don't really reveal Christ to people. So, when we plan our evangelistic campaigns, and when you as a church plan to do things and do all the planning necessary and all the budgets that you need to do and everything right, that's good. But sometimes I wonder if sharing the seed or sharing the gospel is not or should not be as easy, or should be as easy as just what the farmer did. These days, farming is way more complicated, isn't that, Pastor Rick? You know exactly how to do it, you have the machinery, you look at the satellite, you look at the weather, everything is regimented. But the picture that Jesus tells us is a very simple one. Just reach in and throw liberally. That means you don't have to stress out on, is that the right time? Is that the weather? Is it how it's going to go? Is it? Just throw it. God will look after that seed, and if it falls on good ground, it will yield. That's about you also. It tells me about you as a farmer, you as the sower. Do you have faith in the seed? Do you have faith in what's going to happen with it? Lesson number 3, and we are very close to finish. Don't get discouraged. Sow liberally. That's another lesson. I got discouraged in the first day of my ride. I can tell you, I was discouraged. One, for my past experience in the past, and now for that day when I tried, excited, and people said, no, don't want it. And when you get a blunt, no, I'm not interested, you kind of, don't get discouraged. Think about Noah. How many times did he preach? Well, he had plenty of time, 120 years. And then what about Jonah? Well, both of them had kind of the same message. It was a message of warning. Do we have a message of warning? We do have a message of warning, isn't it? Jesus is coming. This world is going to go. You know, we have a message to the world. And what happened in Noah's time? Noah must have got discouraged. But what about Jonah? He was successful as. Everyone repented. Patriarchs and Prophets tells us this. Many at first appeared to receive the warning from Noah, yet they did not turn to God with true repentance. They were unwilling to renounce their sins. During the time that elapsed before the coming of the flood, their faith was tested, and they failed to endure the trial. Overcome by the prevailing unbelief, they finally joined their former associates in rejecting the solemn message. Some were deeply convicted and would have heeded the words of warning, But there were so many to jest and ridicule that they partook of the same spirit, resisted the invitations of mercy, and were soon among the boldest and most defiant scoffers. For none are so reckless and go to such lengths in sin as do those who have once had light, but have resisted the convicting Spirit of God. You see, this is where the power is. The power is in the Spirit of God. And do you accept it or not? Is something that will make your life miserable or will make your life blossom? So as we finish and we look back at our farmer, the task was very simple. He totally relied on the power of the seed. Who's the seed? Jesus is the seed. And his power comes through the Holy Spirit that enables the seed to grow. May his seed grow in you. And may he touch you in such a way that you will only be able to say, with me, I will go. And the harvest will be great. And whether we will be harvesters or not, that doesn't matter. What it matters is we respond together, I will go. May God bless you.